I think there's just so much here to learn and such an opportunity to really use your whole body and learn how you can use your tonality in your body and the choice of words and everything to be able to enhance that executive presence in the high-stake rooms that professionals often find themselves.
I think it comes back to a deeper question for people, which is, have you given yourself permission to have presence in a room? If you give yourself permission to create presence and to be present and to take up room and space, until you do that, you won't allow yourself to pause because you'll be trying to get the words out as fast as you can so you can get out of the way for the next person who is okay to take up presence.
You're listening to Fearless Career Moves. I'm your host, Richa Bansal, founder of Pink Careers, award-winning executive career coach, and former Amazon leader, here to help ambitious women ditch imposter syndrome, lead boldly, make more money, and build careers they love on their own terms. Women can have it all, and I'm here to show you how. Let's get into it. Hey, Colin, how are you?
I'm great, Richa. Hey, I'm excited to have this conversation.
I am so excited to have this conversation with you. I had been waiting for this conversation for so many months now, actually, to bring you on this podcast. And just to give the listeners some context, so Colin Boyd is my wonderful, wonderful business and communications coach. And there are so many wonderful things I have learned from him about how to really communicate with strong executive presence in the workplace and in my business and really generally in life. So I am so excited to bring this conversation with Colin and all these wonderful ideas on how you as a strong, ambitious, professional woman can also really up your game in terms of executive presence. So Colin, I have to kind of say and start the episode today with something that a client asked me yesterday. So literally like in a coaching call yesterday, a client asked me, Richa, I want to be better at storytelling. How can I be better at storytelling? And I kid you not, the first thought that came to me in my mind was infusion selling. Like, you got to learn about infusion selling. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about infusion selling and what that is all about?
Yeah. So I really specialize in helping people to build and deliver presentations, to have a sense of presence about themselves when they're speaking. And so one of the challenges that I found was, a lot of the time I'm teaching people to build a presentation, to get an action, like to take a next step, to sign a contract, to, not always a job offer like what you do, but it's very much like you're in the boardroom, you're in front of an audience, you're in front of potential clients. And it's like, how do you speak in a way where my goal is the audience is moving towards wanting to work with you faster than you're even making an offer. And so infusion selling is essentially this philosophy of not selling all the time, but infusing the selling elements in the presentation. So for example, you'll be delivering some content, delivering some teaching, but then you'll transition into like a case study example, and the case study really articulates and represents what you do with clients. And then all of a sudden the audience they're listening to the content, they're finding it valuable, but they're also putting themselves in the shoes of the case study you're presenting. And so all of a sudden they start picturing themselves wanting to work with you. And so that's infusion selling is essentially a set of techniques that you can use in a presentation to create a sense of desire in the audience to want to work with you.
I mean, I work with you in the context of like business coaching, right? You are one of the really most sought out business coach, speaking coach I find for some of our industry leaders. And I really have found, as I've learned from you about infusion selling and really capturing the room and have this presence, that there is just so much similarity in whether you are trying to sell to a client to get more client and to get more contracts, or whether you are in the room and you're in a high stakes conversation. Let's say maybe you are, making a presentation to your leadership for some investments or for more investment in yourself for that promotion conversation, or whether you're trying to make a case. I even think about, right, like when I did my own green card application for that matter, it's so completely different from careers and business and all of that. When I did my green card application, part of that green card application was also how through written communication, you're kind of building in all of these case studies and how you're talking about yourself and the work that you've done in a way that really like pulls the other person in, and they can like really, really see how you are the expert without you like using the exact words that you're an expert. So I find like there's just like so much similarity in some of these concepts that we learn, whether you are trying to sell to a client as in a business coaching context, or you are you're a business professional, or you're trying to talk to your spouse about an agreement that you want to have and they're not on board. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know if it always works with my spouse, but definitely in a professional setting, it can work really well. And I think about, your expertise, Richa, with helping women land incredibly high paid, high meaning, high impact jobs. And then even more than that now, like them stepping into that leadership, authority, presence, being truly paid and recognized for what they're worth. Speaking and presenting as a leader ends up being a lot of your role. And usually the more people move into leadership, the more you just become a big mouth and a big brain. And basically that's it. It's like you speak and you think, right? You're not doing the work as much anymore. And so learning how to communicate in an influential and persuasive way, I believe is one of the number one skills to be working on in your leadership.
Absolutely, absolutely. I cannot agree more. Like the more you are stepping up in leadership roles, the more you are in the space where you're advocating for your mandate, where you're advocating for the mandate of your organization, you're advocating for the mandate for the success of your team. You're advocating for getting more resources for your team, and your work needs to become less and less doing and more speaking in a way where you can get these investments, where you can get these buy-ins from your leadership team. So Colin, I want to really gonna hear from you when we talk about executive presence, and a lot of like women are told, especially like women who as they're looking to step into leadership roles are told that, hey, you need stronger executive presence. And this whole concept is so sort of fluffy for somebody who doesn't get who gets that, hey, you need strong executive presence, but doesn't get what she needs to do to get there. So I'm curious to hear from you, what does it mean to have strong executive presence in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, and I know you can speak to this as well. So, I mean, I'd love to have a conversation about this. I mean, from my perspective as a leader, as a speaker, presence comes from, first of all, being present. And so a lot of the times people say, I want more presence when I speak on stage and in a room. Well, unless you are actually present, you don't carry presence. And so, one of the techniques of just getting present can actually help a lot. And so, which I'll refer to in a second. But if you think about it like this, if you're sitting in a high stakes meeting, you're sitting in a boardroom and your brain is somewhere else, you're not actually there, you aren't energetically carrying a presence in the room. And so it's those people usually who get focused on themselves who lose presence. If you think about some of the bigger meetings that you've been in, the people who carry a presence, they aren't afraid to take their time when they speak. They're not trying to rush their sentences. They actually have an unconscious belief that I won't be interrupted when I speak. And it comes from like a deeper belief system of, if you think about if you think about the different characters in a meeting, if someone kind of feels like they're going to be interrupted all the time, they're trying to rush their words, they feel like when they speak, they're taking up time and they just want to get their words out and be as fast as they can. That person doesn't carry as much presence as the person who believes that I'm not going to be interrupted when I speak. I have something valuable to share. I'm present in the meeting right now. And so even just that, like when you think about that concept of executive presence, because even the two words together, executive is a sense of leadership, right? And presence is just that. It's like you're actually present. So whenever I teach public speaking to someone, one of the first things to do is just to get present. And so a little exercise you can do, and even the listeners can do this right now as they listen, is take a deep breath. Why don't you do that for?
Okay, let's do this.
Breathe out. And now take another deep breath and just notice the air going through your nostrils down into your chest. And breathe out. Take one more deep breath. Just feel it in your body. All right. Now look around the room and just you don't have to say it out loud, but just notice like 5 colors. So I'm looking around. So blue, black, white, red, yellow, orange. There's like a lime. Right, it's 5 colors. And then wiggle your toes. Just feel your toes in your shoes. Just feel your toes. See how they feel. Take one more deep breath. And then breathe out. And when you breathe out, just come into the room. And what should happen is a lot of the rhetoric that is going on in your mind, like the chatter in the back of your mind, will start to dissipate. You'll get a clearer mind. And first of all, you are present there, right? That's actually a technique that psychologists use. It's a grounding process. But I think it's really powerful whenever you want to create presence. And the second thing is when you focus on yourself and you feel like you're trying to prove something, energetically, you can feel that as well in the room. It's like this sense of being, it's almost like this needy presence. And I know you teach this when you're interviewing of like you're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you. And you have to have that balance of authority where when you're in a room to have executive presence, you have to be there not trying to prove that you're awesome or that, you should be in the room, but it's like your intention is to contribute. Your intention is to make the idea better. Your intention is to, whatever the outcome of the meeting is to make that outcome work. And if you start focusing on yourself, you lose all your executive presence. So as soon as you start focusing on you and worrying about what other people think of you, whether you look good in the meeting, whether you're dressed well enough, all the things, what happens is you lose that sense of presence in the room. And so it's fascinating, as these are just some like mental things, but they can make a huge difference.
I loved like everything that you shared here, and the grounding exercise. When I was kind of doing this with you, I realized that when I started this conversation with you, even though I'm very like we have been working together for almost a year now, I'm very comfortable talking to you. I was still a little apprehensive about what's the next question I'm going to ask you, and how this flow is going to go. And suddenly, like, all of that vanished away, and all I was thinking about, okay, what are the colors in the room? And like, like you just kind of come back to center. So it's like so powerful. I have a presentation coming up in the afternoon. We have 510 people who are registered. So I'm going to definitely use this grounding exercise again right before the presentation. One of the
I do
other
it
things
before every presentation. So even if it's a webinar.
So like absolutely, I'm gonna like use it for this presentation, and then I have like a set of recordings coming up tomorrow as well. So I'm gonna use it then as well. Because you're right. I think one of the other things that you said that is so powerful is that to have strong executive presence, you got to be present in the room, and there are like so many different ways in which we subconsciously, unconsciously take ourselves out of presence. So as you said, right, sometimes when you're thinking about ourselves more than we're thinking about the audience being, your manager, the leader in the room, or whoever you're speaking with, your team, perhaps, right? And if you think about yourselves more than them, you're thinking about your goals and the outcome you want to have as opposed to the outcome they should have from the conversation, you're losing presence in the room. I also find in another way in which professionals like lose presence in the room is by multitasking. I really do think multitasking is a myth.
True. So true. It's a 100% a myth. 100% is like, because your brain can only process one complex task at a time. And so if you're in a high stakes meeting, you're in an important meeting, that is a complex task, and your brain can only do one thing. And so if you're trying to process email or look at things, that's another complex task. You just can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, like we advise, for example, when we work with our clients, like we tell them that, hey, if you are in a interview, close all the notes, like close all the tabs that you have, like don't look at your notes. You want to be present, because when you're present, then you are listening, and then you're listening, then you will be able to answer whatever you need to answer because you have already done the work. If you are in a meeting with your team, do not answer Slack, because if you're answering Slack, then you're not really listening to the question where you can add meaningfully to the conversation. If you're on a town hall, like we see this happen all the time. I remember back in the day, like in my corporate days, there would be town hall meeting and people would be on their phone, right? Yeah. Because they're like, this is useless. Why should I be sitting here? But no, like when you sit in the town hall, you actually pay attention to what your leaders are saying. You are able to kind of tie this thread between the company numbers and the company performance and kind of the work that you did and tie that together, and so powerful. And yes, like that presence will ultimately help you enhance your executive presence later on in the conversations that you want to be part of.
Yeah, definitely huge.
Yeah. I also want to, like you said, that, I do have something to add on executive presence as well. And maybe like I'm going to borrow the framework style that you teach on breaking
Please.
things down.
Yeah.
So the way I think about executive presence is also that you're present like with your head, with your heart, and then with your voice as well. Right? Like, so executive presence is this combination of the choice of words that you are bringing in. So like what you're thinking, your thoughts are, the content that you're presenting, the heart being like, are you being empathetic? Are you listening? Are you really being present? And the words and the way you deliver your tonality. Are you delivering in an up tone or a down tone versus are you really kind of talking in a way where you deeply believe in what you're sharing and you deeply believe that the other person wants to listen to what you have to share?
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, from a tactical, practical perspective, tone is so important. Like tone and pacing. For example, if you've got quite a lot of inflected tone, like if you're speaking and you're kind of inflecting sometimes, like that, it'll take away your power so much. So you definitely need to be speaking with a command tone, which is at the end of a sentence, it drops down. Like we're speaking with a command tone right now, as opposed to right now. So everything becomes a question when you're using an inflected tone. And 100%, I think if you can create more symmetry in your body, so as opposed to asymmetry, which is kind of like on the side. And so if you're standing in front of a audience or even sitting in your chair, if you're leaning to the side, if you're leaning on your hip, any sort of asymmetry takes away a sense of presence and certainty in your delivery. And so I always recommend people to actually stand quite symmetrical especially that's their default place. Can you go onto your hip at times? Can you turn? Yeah, absolutely. But it's like we come back to a sense of symmetry in the body, and because that congruence communicates body language wise certainty.
Amazing. One of the other things I want to add is something that I learned from you was um, symmetry, tonality, and also like use of hands. And I remember like when I used to do presentations, I used to do like this all the time. But from you also realize that you got to like use your whole body to be able to take up space. And the way you move your hands can also allow you to invite others into the conversation, as well as like, so present that commanding tone to, yeah. So I'm like just curious if you can expand on that a little bit too.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is an archetype kind of process that where it's I think it was Bernice McCarthy who kind of created the archetypes. So basically, there's like 5 archetypes, and it's just good to be aware of. Is the pleader, which is the open hands, open, and that's nice to start with. Like you start with the pleader, but the leveler, which is the hands flat, it's kind of like putting hands on the table and it's flat when you're talking like that and you're putting your hands down, it creates a lot of certainty, a lot of these are the facts, this is the truth. There's the bully, which is it's more one hand being direct, it's like the pointing finger, but that's very assertive as well. So that's like when you're driving a message home. The thinker, which is kind of like you got your hand near your ear, holding your elbow, so it's like thinking. It comes from that statue of like kind of I think it's the thinker, the statue, but it's like it's very, they refer to it as the computer, and that's okay. I think that's a great stance to be in, but you don't want to be in that the whole time because it's quite disassociated, the thinker, and then the kind of the joker, which is like asymmetrical. Like even right now, I just do it and you smile, right? Because it does create that. Like as soon as you're kind of joking around, but you've seen people in the room sometimes is they're using the archetype of the joker too much, and people don't take them serious, right? Or there's someone who's a bit more, they're just the leveler the whole time, like they're just super serious the whole time, and like yes, that brings across a sense of presence and directness and seriousness. But then there's also a disconnect because people are like, are you even like a human? Like, can I actually connect with you? And so what I find is you do need a bit of a balance, but I like the pleader which is the open hands. That's going to create some warmth. The leveler, which is the flat hands down, which is going to create some directness and believability, a little bit of bully, which is you're direct, you're saying what you mean. Right. And so if you kind of vary between those three, I'll find usually you will have a pretty good sense of presence. Whether you do the joker or not, I mean, that can create some humor, but you want to sprinkle the joker in a bit, like a little random joke here or there. And I wouldn't try to be funny, like don't try to tell jokes, trying to tell a joke if you're not naturally a joke person. I wouldn't try to do a joke. They usually don't go well. But if you have a natural kind of sense of humor where, especially if you're a bit self-deprecating, you might make some fun of yourself or something like that. If you can sprinkle that in just a touch, it'll create some humanness and some resonance, but you're really leading with the leveler, the bully, and the kind of the pleader, a little bit of pleader. That's usually a nice balance in your communication style.
It's interesting, right? Like how you really can bring your whole like body to really enhance your presence in the room.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that women have, and it's a question I get asked often, is can I use my hands in the meeting? I like use my hands a lot. Like I'm like always moving my hands in some which way or the other. And I find like one of the common advice that is given to professionals, to women, is to not use their hands so much. They anyway struggle with like shrinking. Women, like more than men, struggle with shrinking. Like they will not take up the space. And then the common advice is also given to them: don't use your hands too much. You will not be taken seriously. And kind of what we are discussing here is that you can be intentional about how you move your hands. You can be intentional about how you move your body, and it's like a learned skill.
It is a learned skill. It really is. But I will say, like, you still have to be authentic. Like, you still have to be you. And I think the idea of using your hands to visually show things of like, we're over here and I really want to take us over here, like left to right, and using your hands to communicate. I don't think there's a problem with that. But what would be really powerful, I recommend for everyone, is just like getting some video of yourself speaking or presenting, and just looking at it from the sense of like, what sort of archetype are you presenting? Are you presenting a sense of certainty, a sense of directness, believability, or are you coming off kind of like joker or unsure of yourself? And just if you could be like a fly on the wall and imagine you weren't you were just critiquing the communication, because it's just a learnt skill. And you'll see the difference so dramatically. And I talk about this in the book, One Presentation Away, of this concept of like when you change how you physically show up, the impact is almost instant. And one of the things is even slowing your movements. If you're using your hands a lot and it's like a lot of movements very fast, if you slow down your movements, even that creates so much presence and certainty.
That is so true. I think slowing your movements, and then also at times like waiting with the tonality. So one of the things that I've been practicing a lot is how can we use pauses? How can I, when I speak, I have a tendency to speak very, very fast, just the way I'm speaking
You're
right now.
yeah.
And so how could you use pauses appropriately? How can you really put focus on a word so you enunciate it more and so it carries more weight? Like I think there's just so much here to learn, and such an opportunity to really like use your whole body and learn how you can use your tonality in your body and the choice of words and everything to be able to enhance that executive presence in the high stake rooms that professionals often find themselves. I'm also curious.
Can I say,
Yes.
Richa,
Yes.
on that point, I think it comes back to a deeper question for people, which is, have you given yourself permission to have presence in a room?
Oh,
Because
good. So good.
I mean, that's where it starts. Because
Yeah.
if you haven't personally, and you can decide this consciously, and it's going to feel maybe wrong for some of you to give yourself permission, because maybe growing up, your family didn't show you that you were allowed to have presence in the room. And as an adult, we sometimes have to relearn that just as a human being, I have permission. The very fact that I've been asked to be in this meeting and I qualify to be in this room means that I have permission to be present and to take up space. Because if you give yourself permission create presence and to be present and to take up room and space. Until you do that, you won't allow yourself to pause, because you'll be trying to get the words out as fast as you can so you can get out of the way for the next person who is okay to take up presence.
He's so good. So good. Every time I talk to you, I'm like so mesmerized. I want to hear the whale story again, Colin. Like if you want to like tell everybody your whale story. Like I want to be a whale. I want to be a whale. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean this story for me, I was sitting in a room and I was a part of a program, and there was a few people in the room who were, when I looked at them, I was like, man, that they are what I call a whale. And so, for example, you could search them on at the back in the day on Facebook ads or something like that, and they would show up as a targeting, right? Like you could target that person, or you could focus on that sort of person, and you would attract a certain audience member. And so for me in my industry, I was like, man, that person is a whale. And so I was thinking about, I was in rooms where people were making a lot more money than me. They were a lot more known than me. But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, why am I not making as much money as them? Why am I not as known as them? Why am I not as as prominent as them? Because if I was really honest, I was skill-wise in my specific niche and expertise easily as good as them. But I realized I hadn't given myself permission. I really hadn't given myself permission to be prominent, to be known, to stand out, because the voice I was listening to was you're not as big as them. You're going to be criticized. You're going to be pulled down. Things aren't going to go as well as they did for them as you. Like I was listening to all these voices in my mind. And I remember at one point I just decided that I'm going to be a whale. And I remember I started to write down in my big journal, and I wrote down, I'm a leader, because to be quite frank, I never saw myself as a leader. I had all these pictures of like these executive leaders back in my old corporate days. And I was like, I'm not like them. Like that's not my personality and style. So I never saw myself as a leader. That was the first piece. The second piece was I decided not only was I going to be a leader, but I wrote down, I'm going to lead the market leaders in what I do. And so I started to write that down every single day. And I remember it was literally 3 months later, I had a conversation with someone in my market who is, one of the most prominent people in the world, biggest people in the world. And like, this is someone who I was on my list of people wanting to meet one day. I was like, I'd love to meet them one day. And she literally said, could you coach me? Right? So she comes to me and she goes, could you coach me on my speaking? Could you coach me on a presentation I've got coming up? It's a high stakes presentation. I want it to do really well. So we worked together and we made like $1 million in one day. And then she sends me this video testimonial of the impact of the work that I had on her life. And I'm like, this concept of me being a whale started from realizing I hadn't given myself permission to be a whale, to be a leader in my language. And then when I gave myself that permission and I started to act as if that was true, then the evidence started to show up. But so often we wait for the evidence before we give ourselves permission, but it's the other way around. We have to give ourselves permission first, and then the evidence shows up.
I mean, it is so, so, so true. And as kind of was listening to your story, I think I've listened to the story, I think 5 times now, and I still, every time I get goosebumps. But I do find like a lot of women, a lot of my clients don't give themselves permission to be the whale, to be the leader, especially when they go into interview rooms with the VPs and when they are in that high stakes, like leadership meeting with their president, with their CEO. They're shrinking. They almost like they put the other person, they put the leader on the pedestal and they put themselves down. And then you feel like they are giving you something, as opposed to really being this mindset that I am a whale here. I am the leader. I know my subject matter expertise. Like I know my subject matter area, and the leader like wants me in the room. They want to hear from me on what I have to say. Right? And it's like a conscious decision. It's a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think about, for me, with my employees and my team, I'm like, I need you. I need your contribution, right? I'm like looking for insights because you know things that I don't know. You know things about my customers I don't know. You know things about the business. One of the other thoughts that really helps me is realizing that they have just as many fears, challenges, vulnerabilities as a human as I do. And in fact, you know, a lot of the time, because I get the chance to speak with very, very successful people, and I'll tell you what, like they are dealing with big challenges and big problems. They have the same fears and they're just looking for solutions themselves. And so for me, when I see them as they're just another human, they've got fears, they've got challenges just like me. It just I'm able to connect with them, and so that's been a big one. My dad taught me that when I was younger. I remember sitting next to him, and he would be speaking on the phone with the big chunky mobile phone, and he would get off the call, and it was like he was like talking to a good friend. And I remember saying to him one day, "Oh, Dad, who was that?" And he goes, "Oh, that was the CEO of our company over in Japan." And I mean, the Japanese culture is very kind of hierarchical in
Mhm.
general, like it's very respectful in that way. And he was like, "Oh yeah, he's a good buddy of mine." And he basically runs like a, you know, $5 billion corporation. And he just told me, he said, "You know what? They're just human, mate. They've got all the same challenge. They've got vulnerabilities, challenges. You just talk to them like a real human, show them respect and add value into their life." And he goes, You'll go so far in life." And that really taught me that lesson early on, just watching my dad build those relationships where other people in his world didn't have that access. And I remember finding myself, even in corporate days, I remember, it was so funny. I remember sitting in the office of the CEO of the company when I lived in Australia. And it was the biggest discount retail company in Australia, like $1 billion company. And I'm sitting with him having a cappuccino with his new cappuccino machine, me and him, and my my manager, my director walked past, and she pulled me out after. She was like, "Colin, what the heck were you doing in the CEO's office?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, we were testing out the new cappuccino machine." but but it definitely was like just that sense of, and I started to build a great relationship with him, and it was definitely that sense of, I learned to give myself permission to be in a room and to take up presence and take up space, and I knew I could add some value. So
Oh, it's so interesting, so beautiful. I remember, like, as you were telling your cappuccino story, I kind of remember back in my corporate days as well. We were part of this big task force, the special task force that was created. We were 15 of us that were handpicked across the organization for this like secret task force to cut out costs from the organization and so on. And I remember in one of the meetings, the president had come in and he sat, and like nobody was like sitting next to him, and I just like went and grabbed that seat next to him, and that gave me a chance to like introduce myself and joke a little bit, and maybe like joke a little bit more that time than I
yeah,
do now. But yeah, just like gave me a chance to just like have a conversation with him, and he knew my name already, and then he knew a little bit more about me and what my team does. And what's like so interesting is a few weeks after that, I remember a friend was telling me about and this friend is in like was in sales, and he was telling me about like how he's like going playing golf with like some of his leadership, and he's always like kind of like walking back, and the leadership is coming in the golf cart and so on. And I told him about this experience that I had recently had in the room during that task force. And then he reported back a couple of weeks later, my friend, he said, "Richa, this time I decided to sit in the golf cart with my leader, and we got to talk, and I got this XYZ opportunity out of it." And I was like, this is like so mind-boggling, because not only were you able to change your belief around whether you belonged, you know, next to the leader or not, um, I was able to like change somebody else's belief as well. And it just has such a like a rolling downstream, like expanding impact on your team. And because I do believe everybody's seeing you as a mentor, right? So as you are presenting yourself as a leader, as you are giving yourself permission to be present in the room and show up as a whale in whatever you do, you are like teaching other young girls and women and your daughters and your sons to also
yes.
learn to be present, to also learn to show up as a leader before somebody else gives you permission.
So true. And I love that concept of, like building relationships and contributing into people. Like if you find things that are value, contributing into them, those relationships and they really unlock such incredible opportunities. It really like life really does move at the speed of trust, especially in like a big corporate and things like that. Like the more trust you can build, the more relationship you can build. My gosh, your career can really improve significantly in the opportunities.
Um, Amazing. So I want to take a little bit of like a detour and talk a little bit about also conversations where the other person is not as willing or cooperative or maybe even hostile towards you. And how can somebody still maintain that assertiveness, can still maintain that level of groundedness and calmness and confidence in that presentation? So I'm going to give you some context. We do, especially like with large tech companies, I've myself like had an experience where a senior leader is like trying to really overpower the conversation. I mean, there's so many like type A's, what I call like type A personalities, who can sometimes feel very difficult in the room, or maybe like genuinely you and the person that you are kind of working with, they have completely differing opinion, and you find yourself shrinking, and they find they are overpowering you and kind of cutting you off. So I'm curious, like how can like somebody maintain that level of confidence and groundedness and handle that difficult conversation?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that come up here. I mean, one thing is if someone is like very type A or they're dominating the conversation, a lot of the times, I mean, if you think about it, sometimes you can go, oh man, that must be because they're so successful or they're so powerful or etc. But to be quite frank, the people who do that are actually speaking out of insecurity a lot of the time. Like they're trying to prove their worth to you. And so, first of all, take a step back that if someone is very intense and very direct, most of the time you don't realize it because at the time you feel intimidated, but they're actually trying to just protect themselves. That's why they're doing it like that. And so one thing that can work quite well, that's worked, in general, is first of all, acknowledging that person. So usually if they're a type A, status, significance, being acknowledged is actually a really important need for them. And so if you give them a few little breadcrumbs of like let's say it's Johnny, John who's speaking, you can actually say, one thing that I've noticed with you, John, is you do such a great job at doing this, and I saw that the other week actually. And I think that's what I've really been thinking about that. And I think that we could probably implement some of that in our team. It's really fascinating. Like you give someone a little bit of significance in the communication, the conversation, and they will settle right down. It's really interesting. I used to have this a lot because I would run a lot of corporate workshops. So I would be first time in the room. There's some big personalities, all leaders, and I'm come in as this, external facilitator, or actually I was even internal at the time at different times. But whenever there was someone who was disruptive, I would usually go to them in the break, check in with them, give them some value, ask them some questions, just acknowledge them. And they would settle right down after it, or I would acknowledge them in the meeting itself. And it kind of feels counterintuitive a lot of the time because you just want them to shut up. Like in your mind, you're like, just settle down, mate. But yeah, there's something magical about acknowledging them because their ego is a lot of the times looking for some significance. That's one thing. Another thing is just once again, it comes back to that decision of being okay with a little bit of discomfort, because especially in sales, the person who can handle the greatest level of discomfort and uncertainty usually wins the sale. And so learning to be okay with a little bit of discomfort, just breathe and allow yourself to just keep communicating through. And especially if you're in a relationship with someone over a long period of time, if you show up consistently, and even if there's a bit of, back and forth at the start because they're kind of testing you, eventually, if you just stay consistent with who you are, generally that will resolve, and then I always find that, if we're talking organizationally, politically, if you can, outside of those meetings, contribute to them, be a little bit like, you got to be careful, but you could be a little bit vulnerable with them about just your life, like your family, and just build a little bit of like, see them as a human being, because a lot of times they'll see you as a competitor. But as soon as they start to frame it as seeing you as a human being and you see them as a human being, the energy changes so much in your relationship. So if we think about like politically, or like when I say like corporate politically, managing politics and all that sort of stuff, is essentially you just managing some ego. And so building some vulnerability in relationship with them outside of a meeting in a more casual setting will make the formal settings usually a lot more comfortable as well.
Yeah, I find that too. I think vulnerability is very empowering and for the relationship, and everybody has a need to be respected and heard. I think at the end of the day, like everybody has a need to be heard. And sometimes though, like, when you have done everything that you can to build that relationship for them to feel heard, sometimes it's also okay to say that, let's agree to disagree.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes that's okay too, right? And so I think just like recognizing where you build that relationship, recognizing where you kind of pull the other person in, and then also recognizing when you hold your ground and say, look, let's just agree to disagree, but this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that helps a lot is reminding people contextually of the goal. So, because a lot of the times they're just trying to be right? They're just trying to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And that if we remind the team or the meeting of the goal is to have this outcome. The goal is to make this better. And so even framing it from the sense of, I'm okay to be wrong. I want everyone else to feel okay to be wrong. And because the goal is to make this better, it's not for each person to be right. That's never going to work out like that. And so let's work as a team to make this goal better.
Absolutely. Colin, we can go on forever and forever and forever. Remember, like when I had come on your podcast, like we could just like chat forever, but we don't have forever. I want to respect your time. So I would love to know, where can people learn more about the work that you do? And even though like you are more of a business coach, as I said, I think I've learned so much about communication and executive presence and really commanding the room. This book, guys, if you have not read Colin's book, One Presentation Away, is like life-changing. So you got to like read this book. Where can people learn more about you, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best place to start for people. If you're a reader, grab One Presentation Away. You can grab it just on Amazon or something like that. It's my life's work in there. It's over 17 years of being in front of people and communicating in that one book. And I think people will enjoy it. It's tried to add some good stories in there, lots of tactical stuff. I think it's a good read. So been getting some good feedback on that one.
Absolutely. The one thing that I'm taking away from this session is that you have to believe that you have the right to be present, and you believe that you have the right to be a leader before somebody else is going to give you permission to be present.
Yeah, I call it knighting yourself. Like so often we wait to be knighted, of like, you are now a leader. We're knighted. We have to knight ourselves, right? We have to just give ourselves permission and just be, give ourselves permission to be the leader. And I realized that happened for me and it happens at different levels, but on a big level happened for me about 6 years ago, and it completely changed my life. And I hope everyone takes that on today and does that.
Thank you so much, Colin, for being here, for sharing all these wonderful insights with our listeners. I appreciate you a lot. Thank you. That's it for today's episode of Fearless Career Moves. If this resonated with you, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss what's next, and share it with a woman who's ready to make her next fearless move. And if you are ready to take your career to the next level, make sure to check out The Fearless Hire, my signature career accelerator for ambitious women just like you. You can learn more at www.pinkcareers.com. Until next time, stay fearless.